All right. Hey, welcome everybody. It's Eric Dreiman, host of the Hooks and Hoses podcast. This is the June episode of Hooks and Hoses. Want to welcome everybody back. I'm really happy to have two guests on this month to talk about a book that just recently got released through Fire Engineering. I have Captain Jim Silvernail. I'm sorry, Chief Jim Silvernail. I'm getting my tongues tied here. Chief Jim Silvernail and Captain Arthur Ashley. And their book is, let me see if I can get it up in the photo here, the Nontraditional Truck Company. And I know these guys have been working on this book for quite some time, so we're going to dive into it and learn a little bit more about the book and let the audience know where they can get a copy of it, because it's a pretty good read. So, Chief Silvernail, I'll start off with you. Just tell the audience a little about yourself and how you got your start. And I know you're second generation, but just tell the audience what they need to know about you. So.
Well, first, I wish that was true what you said, Captain Silvernail, because those were the best times of my life. Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, it's the best job in the whole fire department, in my opinion, being in that front right seat and just being able to go in fires. I am a fire chief now. I've been doing this now at the city of Kirkwood for about 9 years. I worked through the ranks through a bigger district, a little bit west of where I'm at here in St. Louis County. But I worked through the ranks, battalion chief, captain, and firefighter. But like I said, the captain's job is the best job in the world. I truly learned more in that position than I have in any of the positions I've had in the fire service. So, our friend here, Arthur, was smart enough to stay in that role. But no, I've done a couple things in the fire service. I co-authored this book with Arthur. I also wrote a book called Suburban Fire Tactics in 2013 for fire engineering. I currently sit on the fire engineering advisory board and am on the FDIC advisory board, but still try to remain very active within the fire service, even though I sit behind this desk through different things. And luckily, my buddy down there, Arthur, has helped me stay in tune with that. But my background truly is in operations. I don't do a lot of the other inspections, investigations, hazmat, it's all operations. But one of my background things is I did write standard operating guidelines for a long time with operational structure fires. And that's where a lot of this information came from. And that's really where my passion's at. Teaching at our fire academy for years on truck company operations kind of led me to Arthur. But I'm going to let Arthur talk about himself now.
Arthur Ashley, and I retired last year after 30 years with the city of Lexington, Kentucky. And I kind of wish I didn't retire because I didn't realize how much I would miss it. I was wanting to stay 35 years, but family talked me into leaving. And actually, it was a good thing that I left for family and stuff, but I really missed the job. I missed the runs. I missed the firehouse and the guys. There's other aspects of the job that I don't miss. Jim's right. Captain was the best spot for me. I had aspirations to go higher, but it wasn't for me at our department. I did like riding up in the position of at one time as major, now district chief. I did enjoy that. I love taking care of the guys and the people. I loved running and commanding scenes and stuff, but I was not a political person, and I could not do that position on the administrative side of it. It just wasn't for me. The front right seat was good for me, and commanding people and getting dirty was perfect for me in the operations side of it. Started in '86 as a volunteer and just came up the ranks when Lexington. I joined them in '94. And I'm still involved in emergency services, and I still teach, have a company on the side here, and we travel around the country and we teach, and we do a lot of stuff, and I try to keep involved in a lot of stuff. And Jim asked me several years ago to come on board with this idea about the truck and the non-traditional truck, because of the way the United States Fire Service is set up with not so many truck companies out there, and it was a novel idea, and I had ideas on it. He had ideas on it. We came together, and the book came together over a little bit of time, and personal time off, doing this and that. COVID hit, this and that, and other things. And finally we put it together, and it came to fruition. And so here we are.
Very good. Well, you kind of you led me into my first question, was what was the inspiration for the book? I mean, was it Jim's idea, and Art got,
it was like Jim's idea. It was Jim's idea. Jim reached out to me with the idea. I think Jim had enough. Jim saw something in me from an operations standpoint as a captain. I guess from where I was teaching a lot, social media and things like that, and through friends of ours and other people. And I think he put enough faith in me to come on board with my background. And I can't say enough about somebody believing in me enough to do that. And I thought it was a great idea, because as I was teaching and traveling, I was seeing that the United States is engine-based firefighting, is engine-based departments. And all three of us know that truck company operations take place at every fire. And I was seeing that a majority of the fire departments I was teaching at, engine-based fire departments, there was truck company operations taking place, but not really a truck culture. Some places were not doing truck operations. Some places were not doing adequate searches or no searches at all. So we had to come up with this plan of bringing the fire service into the truck culture and incorporating it into the engine-based departments, and letting them understand that, hey, this has to take place from the search and rescue side of it, ventilation, laddering, forcible entry, all the way up to salvage, overhaul, and everything. And it has to be incorporated, not just shooting from the hip, but having a plan and building your plan and building your culture.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I appreciate that. So the book is titled The Nontraditional Truck Company. So are you saying that you decided on that title because of the engine-based concept, or how did you guys why didn't you call it the Traditional Truck Company off of an engine, or some other title? How did you guys?
The hardest thing of writing this book was really trying to decide upon a title. We had the concept, we had the idea, but we had gone back and forth, and really up until a year or two ago, we didn't decide upon the title. But you really can't call a book, doing truck company stuff without it just became too much. So we had to have something, and the non-traditional really describes the book, because if you think about how the United States Fire Service is set up with our teachings, our books, it's all based around the engine work, the truck work, and the way we're doing things is completely off of that mantra. So away from that. So we really wanted to concentrate on, it's like, how do you do truck company work without the way we've been taught, throughout our fire service career. And it wasn't a hard concept, because the majority of us in suburban America, in the Midwest, all over the country, have been used to the system for years, but we just couldn't decide upon a name. So the non-traditional really stuck.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes sense. And I think it's a great title for the book. So I think you guys did a great job titling it and reading through the book. I think that's, the title's appropriate. So how did you decide on what chapters you were going to cover, or what content you were going to cover? I mean, was it just, hey, Lover's U is what we go off of for truck company operations, so let's just do it like this? Or how did you guys come up with
going back to the stuff? Yeah, sorry to cut you off, Eric. Going back to the genesis of the book, this was kind of spun off my first book, Suburban Fire Tactics, where we realized that we have a challenge. We have this challenge of, how do you make truck work? How do you get it on your fire ground if you don't have a truck? But more importantly, how do you get that attitude, that culture, the expertise? My background was after being a fire captain, I noticed, that there were certain things that weren't occurring that should be occurring, and that we needed to get that implemented. And then as a battalion chief, I really noticed that failure really occurred due to lack of truck company operations, or poor truck company operations. So when we had this concept together about this book, I really wanted a book that wasn't just about standard operating guidelines. I mean, I can tell you as a chief I can put out memos all day long, but unless they're enforced, unless there's really something behind them, they don't really mean anything. They're just a piece of paper. When Arthur and I got together to write this book, we said we got to have certain things we want to capture. Of course, we want to capture the methodology of the standard operating guideline behind it. That was my part of it, being the chief. But I also understand that I needed that aspect of the attitude, the culture, the street smart. I just didn't want a book, well, this is how you do it. I wanted stuff that really works. And of course, the UL stuff as well, because I think that's important to really give validity to how we justify what we do on the fire ground. But that's really why we developed the chapters we did, is because we wanted to be all inclusive. We just didn't want to have a manual of saying, well, if your priority is by your arrival order, dot, 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 dot. And that's where Arthur really stepped in with the attitude and the culture aspects of that.
It was, for me, for the operations side, what people don't understand, when we wrote the book, we were well over 400 pages. And there was a lot of stuff that we had to gauge back on for the book. And what people also have to understand is that the first and foremost priority for the non-traditional truck side of it was search and rescue and immediate rescue with vent enter search and things of that nature. I was pushing that. However, I could not push the type of searches you would be doing, the type of searches for certain buildings, the type of searches this and that, because this book would be extremely thick. And if I went into the type of ventilations for different buildings, the type of searches, the type of everything incorporated into what truck company operations are, this book would be ginormous. And so the one thing that I looked at that the example is like, if we're talking about a search, when I talk in there, I talk about getting to the fire and working your way out, looking at ways to get in, looking at moving to the fire quickly, time and opportunity, things to that measure of things that people don't think about. You can take an LA City fireman, he's going to approach a building different, but he's than an Atlanta firefighter, but they're going to do it the same. So I can't pick out what everybody's going to do. So I give them a general idea to how to think about things. Tactics wise, I wish I could go into it deeper with everybody, but that would be a tactical book. This book is to basically put you in the mindset of building your culture and putting you in the mindset of, hey, when we show up, we're going to work as a truck because we are assigned in an order. We're assigned while we're en route. We're assigned based on the box we are going to. And we need to be able to switch from an engine company to a truck company, and we've trained on it. That's the mindset we're trying to create. I couldn't get deep into the tactics of everything, and I wanted the readers to understand that if I got deep into it, this book would have been a culmination of a lot of books that are out there, and this book would have been huge, and we couldn't have done that. This book is to make people understand that the truck company operations exist no matter where you are. Three things that always exist at every fire. There should be a search, extinguishment, and ventilation. And, two of those are truck company operations. Two of those are fundamental things of operations, truck company operations that should take place. So we covered those. Your type of ventilation that you do in New York City is going to be the difference than what they do in Texas based on construction. So I couldn't delve into that stuff. But the fire burns the same. It goes up, it raises, it mushrooms, it comes down, and all that stuff. So that was what concerned me more than anything, was not being able to get in depth with stuff. I wanted the readers to understand that we couldn't get in depth, but I'm pushing you down an avenue to understand that your culture has to change, your routine has to change, and you have to build this into your response objective, your pattern, your department, to getting the truck company culture there of, number one, we're going after people to rescue them, put ourselves in places of danger, realizing we have the highest form of respiratory protection, the highest form of thermal protection. These people don't have it. We're going for them. We're ventilating the structure to get the heat off of these people, and we're going to get in the structure by any means possible to do this. And we're going to use tools, general tools, from the truck company to do this.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really important when you write a book is try to understand your audience. And the American Fire Service has a large diversity in audience. And really, we wanted to write a book that captured everybody. Some people, I mean, back to the title of the book, The Truck Company, there's some people who don't even, that it's so far gone of what a truck actually is, ladder truck, truck company, et cetera. So we really wanted to be able to put a book together that explain what we're talking about. But, and Arthur's right. The bottom line is that we wanted to impress upon people is that, this stuff's very important. But the bottom line is we want to impress upon the search. We want to impress upon supporting the fire attack and really the coordinated fire attack, coordinating actions. We got to stop using the problem with the word coordinated fire attack is you think of just ventilation, and Arthur and I have talked about it. It's more about coordinating tactics. And yeah, ventilation is a huge part of that. But there are so many tactics that have to be coordinated. And like I said, it's hard to explain that in a title. But that's once again, going back to that first question of non-traditional. But these are the things that we wanted to capture with our chapters.
The largest gist of it is that you don't have to have $1 million ladder truck sitting in front of the structure. It's all about the tactics, the tasks, and the strategies you use to get those done to complete what needs to be done. That's what it's overall about. And to understand that you should be able to, jump from a engine's position to a truck position because you have learned to do that. And, it's a jack of all trades and a master of many. I don't like to ever say that, but if you're in an engine-based department, you should be able to step across the bay floor there and go to work on a truck company. If you don't have a truck company, it's about the task itself that's being done. And that's what we were trying to capture.
No, I think you did a really good job in doing that. And that is the challenge because East Coast to West Coast, every department's different sizes, different staffing levels, different construction considerations, all those things. It is hard to develop a book that is going to hit all those different finite things because, like you said, it would be 1,000-page book or more, multiple books, right, to hit everything. My thought process has been, and I haven't started out in a department that didn't have any truck companies, to where I work now, where we have an abundance of truck companies. I think it's important almost to think of truck company operations as a function and not, certainly it makes it easier if you pull up on a 100-foot stick, rear mount stick with a couple 100 feet of ground ladders and all the hand tools and saws and everything. I mean, it certainly, there's no doubt that it makes that easier, but truck company operations is a function, just like engine company operations is a function, right? If I pull up on a Quint that has a pump on it, and it makes more sense to stretch a hand line than it does throw a ladder, we could flip the script there and have the same conversation, right? It's all functions. Certainly, I could pull up on a 2-person Johnny and Roy type rescue truck, and I can still perform search, or I can still do a VES, or I can, open up for the attack crew. So it's more about the mindset and what functions need to be accomplished than necessarily what fire apparatus you arrive on the fire scene in, right? So
and that was one of our major concepts was that, when we look at a standard operating guideline, we actually call it a functional standard operating guideline as opposed to positional. In the positional, your assignment really is determined by what apparatus you arrive on. In a functional, it determines the function that you have to assume to, complete the tactic that has to happen by priority of achieving the objective. And that was a lot of crap I just said, but you get the point. It's all by priority, and it doesn't matter what's on top of your apparatus. It's the function of the crew, not the apparatus, that really determines what you're going to be doing at the fire ground.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first takeaways I took from the book when I was reading through it was the concept of, I don't know what you call it, 1+1 or 1 and 1. And that to me, as looking back on it now, it's like, wow, I didn't really think about it that way, but that is so fundamental to a successful fire ground. So was that one of your ideas, or was it collective, or how did that come to be? And just talk to the audience about that whole concept of the 1-in-1 and why that's
Sure.
important.
So I'll start. It was one of the concepts I used in suburban fire tactics, and it's really a concept that I've used when I write standard operating guidelines for these suburban-based agencies that do not have truck companies. Is okay. So how do you decide who's going to do the truck work? Well, when you look at what has to be achieved on the fire ground, you start with the priorities. Obviously, life is 100% the priority. But sometimes in our world where we don't have two companies arriving together, the search is actually done by getting that, mitigating the problem and in saving people is really getting a line on the fire and then starting to get, the search in place. I know that some people are like, what are you talking about? Well, we only have so much we can accomplish with one crew. But having said that, there has to be emphasis put on that hand line. There has to be companies that assist that hand line to really make it work. A lot of times we have crappy tactics where we think that just opening the bail of that nozzle puts the fire out, when really there's so much more that has to go on that fire floor. So therefore, it has to be supported by another crew. So if you think about the way an SOG looks like, it should be one arrives, one looks like an engine. One arrives, one should be a truck that assists that floor. If you keep pulling more lines off, they should have more support. And that kind of goes with the 1-in-1 concept. So that really is kind of a driving factor when I look at these, how many companies you have coming in on your box or your first alarm assignment and how they need to get assigned. Obviously, they're going to be different according to your circumstance, but it really is a driving factor. Arthur, do you want to add to that?
It is a driving factor, and everything you said is absolutely true. And things that I like to throw in there as well is I like for that company officer who's coming in to think that, and I give scenarios when I'm speaking and stuff of, we've got our bread and butter houses. You may be there by yourself a long time. You may not have that ladder truck coming. You may not have a ladder truck, but the scenarios I give, you could be coming in on a quint. Let's say you're coming on a quint. You've got 500-gallon tank. You don't have any other companies coming. Well, they're coming from a long distance. Your water source is a long distance away. You pull up, you got heavy fire in a 2-story apartment complex, and it's 2 units plus on fire. And the decision is, do I pull a hand line and make an attempt to put the fire out with 500 gallons, or do I make an attempt to get in that apartment and start searching and then search out to the other apartments? Because I know that 500 gallons is not going to last me a long time. It's going to be like 4.5, 5 minutes maybe if I've got an open line the entire time moving it. And then I have to think, do I take my personnel and put them in places and start searching? It's a decision, The person coming in on the quint, they say to themselves, and this is a question I get asked all the time. I'm in a quint, and am I an engine or am I a truck? And I tell people this every single time. If you come in with the mindset of being on a truck company and you place your truck where that you could put the aerial device in operation when you first get there, and you stretch the line from that location to where your aerial device may be used or could be used later, that is great versus pulling up and pulling lines and then realizing you need your aerial device and you're short, you're in the wrong spot or whatever, because once the big lines come in and the little lines come off and your ladder is not in the right place, you're screwed. If you go in with the mindset of being on the truck and you put the aerial device where it needs to be, I can stretch more hose where I need to be. So more lives are saved with a properly placed hose line than anything we do. I tell people to be careful with that because I've seen this myself. And I always add to that, it's got to be in the right hands of the right person, placed in the right place, used correctly, and the water not wasted. Because that 500 gallons could be wasted. It could be not in the right place. It could be a lot of things. All this comes with decision making. And then we come with the second company coming in. Then we come with the third company coming in. What are we presented with when we get there? Is this a 1-story house, 2-story house? Is this a Queen Anne, a Victorian? Is this a garden style apartments? Everything changes the tactics or tasks that need to be done, but it's the same stuff that needs to be done. It's just on a much more grand scale, depending on crews, short staffing. You're 3 or less, you're short staffed. You're 4 more, you're fully staffed on that truck. Split your crews. You could be attacking the fire and searching the fire. It's just things to make people think with what they have. But the truck culture has to come to play in there.
What and going back to your original question of the 1+1, I just thought of this. I don't know why I just thought of this, but when I was a young company officer, our standard operating guideline did not look the way it is now. We did not have the 1+1. It was pull line, second truck pull line. Somehow get truck company operations in there, but it wasn't well defined. Well, we had a basement fire one day where we pulled off 3 lines. No truck work was going on, and they went into the basement, not through the steps, but through the floor, because nobody was able to make access because it wasn't that bread and butter fire. Excuse that language. I don't like it, but it wasn't your typical fire. And it wasn't just simply opening a bail. There were things that had to go in place to get those lines in place. A lot of truck company operations that we forget about that are essential for placing hand lines. And at that point, we sat back. We're like, what are we really trying to achieve here? Shouldn't we, if we pick the right gallonage weapon, shouldn't we be able to make a big impact with that front line? Now, there are fires that require multiple lines. We know this. We know that the backup lines are essential, but the priority at the time is getting that main hand line in place and to put emphasis on that hand line by dedicating another company to assist with it, which typically is called facilitation or truck company operations, hence the 1+1.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all important stuff, and I couldn't agree more with what you guys are preaching here. It's good stuff. Arthur mentioned the truck company mindset or the truck company attitude, the truck company culture. I like to say. That's very important, and people, and we talked before the show, we started recording, you can say you're an aggressive firefighter, and that's great. And that's important within reason, but it goes much farther than that. And the attitude of an engine company firefighter or engine company officer is going to be much different than the attitude of a truck company firefighter or a truck company officer. So, you got a chapter in your book about attitude and culture. Could you guys just elaborate on that a little bit more, go into a little bit more depth about the importance of that? And not only that, but can you have a truck company culture in an all-engine department, which I already know the answer to that because that's kind of the premise for the book, right? You don't have to have a big red truck with a big long ladder attached to it to have that truck company mindset or that truck company culture, but that's easier said than done sometimes in some organizations. So just talk a little bit about that whole idea, that whole mindset.
The culture thing, the culture thing is the first thing about the culture is, of course, anybody that does the truck culture, they want to see that ladder truck in their department. And not everybody can have that ladder truck, but there are people who are on engine companies or whatever they have, squads or whatever's in their department that can and they do truck company operations really well. Forcible entry, throwing ladders, ventilation, searching, VES, and everything else that goes with it. Their basics. They get their basics, they get their repetitions, which creates their muscle memory, which creates their routine for everything. I don't give the engine company any I don't get onto them because stretching to the 3rd floor of a Queen Anne with 2 guys from a 3-man company is tough. But when you've got 5 guys or 4 guys or 2 companies stretching it, it's a little bit easier. Now, you put a 3-man engine company doing truck work, and they're getting up and they're opening up, that's kind of tough. You got 4 men, you can split. The culture is that you're attaining the information, you're putting it to work, you're learning everything, you're creating the repetitions and the routine to do these things, and you understand the overall concept of what we're trying to complete. The job of the truck is rescue and saving lives. It is also supporting the function of the engine because that's also what helps save lives. When they understand that and they see the concept, that the concept is making a difference of that ventilation of when you open a roof and you raise the smoke off the floor off the victims, or you raise it enough to where the search team can move or the engine can make the push, or you're searching VES or whatever, that this all comes together. they become passionate about it, and that builds your culture. Now, the culture cannot survive unless it is supported by administration. It has to be supported by administration. It has to be supported by the company officer, the people in the house, because it will die if they don't support it. Two people in the department can't keep it alive. It has to be supported by those other people because attitudes are contagious. Now, the attitude of the truck is aggressive, dirty, nasty, knowing your job, having mechanical aptitude, and getting in there and getting it done regardless of what you have to do. That's a truck company. And sometimes you have to step on other people to get to where you need to be, to step on the back of an engine company to get to past them to search for people. It's not personal, it's business. And you have to have that attitude, but you have to be supported by people above you in administration. If you're not, they won't let you do what you need to do. They won't put you in places or give you the equipment or give you the blessing to do what you need to do.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I love your comment about, it has to start at administration. I will tell you, the attitude and culture starts here in this office, and I accept that. But this is not where operational decisions are made. What I have to have the ability to do is have the trust and the training and the expertise of my people to understand and say, the decision making occurs at the company officer level and even below that. And when I was a battalion chief, what I wanted to do was to be a traffic cop. I did not want to have to get there. And there are times when you have to dole out orders. There's audibles that have to be called. But the best times I ever had on fires was when I could sit there and I could watch my companies go to work, and they knew exactly what to do, and they were hungry to go work. And it's not free. And there's somebody, well, isn't that freelancing, chief? No, that's not freelancing. That's working off a game plan. And if you work off a game plan, it's not freelancing. But I could sit there and watch, and it was like they knew what to do. But that requires an attitude. It requires that culture that I'm going to learn these things. I'm going to understand that. It's got to come from the top to where, because I don't micromanage, and I don't want to micromanage. I want those decisions to be made by the people who are going to be doing the work. So, like I said, they have to have that forethought before that aggressiveness to make it happen. I mean, it's very simple to get caught up in this world of, well, I arrived with an engine, a tank, and a pump and hose. Therefore, I must pull off hose. That we have to get out of that culture. That's not the case. I mean, yeah, there's definitely need for backup lines. There's definitely need for firepower. That's what puts our fire out and mitigates it. But we have to have these support things, and people have to understand that. And that's all this mindset that we're trying to get into. And Arthur and I make a very good point. It's like, look, you'll never hear me say, okay, engine, whatever, you're on the scene, you got ventilation. I don't ever want to hear people give out single resource, or, if it has to happen, it happens, but single functional commands. I should be able to say, engine 2, you're on the scene, you got fire floor truck, or you got first truck. And they should go, I got a checklist of what I need to do. And then later in the arrival, hey, engine or Quint, whatever, you've arrived, you've assumed the second truck, go see what the first truck needs. And they should coordinate and say, oh, ventilation hasn't occurred, or the search is not complete. One of the worst things that can happen, command to interior, I need to make sure that I have a primary done. Why do I have to tell them a primary? That should be done, right? When I'm calling and saying a primary needs to be done from the car, way too late in the game. And that's why this is so important. I mean, this is why we're talking about it today.
All right. Yeah. I have some questions here related to that. I'm going to jump to them because I think it's important you kind of crack the ice here. So let's talk about it. I know in my travels around teaching in different places around the country, when I talk about, pre-designated assignments or assignments based upon order, what I refer to as order of arrival, and what I also refer to as standard company functions, which is, firefighter behind the officer does this, the officer is going to do that, the engineer is going to do this. People say, well, we could never do that here. And I say, yes, you can, but you've got to front load it, right? You can't roll up at a fire or whatever the emergency is, and have all that stuff be in place if you don't have the documents in the form of your standard operating guidelines that lay out, hey, the first engine's going to do this, the second engine does this, first truck, second truck, or the third engine assumes truck company operations, the fourth engine does this, whatever. Or if you're in an all engine department, you can have those philosophies be standard, concepts, but it takes a lot of front loading. Same with your personnel. If I know, hey, we're going to be doing first truck assignment when we get there, whether you're on an engine or a truck company, that means that we need to grab a set of irons. We're going to be doing search, so we're going to need our thermal imaging camera, whatever it is. So let's talk about that, because I get frustrated talking to people when they say, well, we could never do that here, right? And you hear it on the radio, whether it's one of your local municipalities or it's somebody you see, post a video on social media, or the incident commanders doing all the things that Jim just said, right? Engine so-and-so, when you get here, you'll be attacked. Truck so-and-so, when you get here, you're going to be searched, right? None of that traffic needs to take place if you've done your legwork ahead of time. So talk about, and I know, Chief, you said you're kind of the policy, that's one of your.
I'm the academic nerd of it all.
Yeah. and but there's both sides to it, right? As a company officer, as a truck company firefighter, you've got to know those policies. As a chief officer, you have to develop those policies. So everybody has to ultimately work together, right, to make this thing happen when the rubber meets the road. So I've gone on too long. So
no, it's good. So yeah, I did the academic part of the boring shit. Arthur did all the good stories and all the street smart stuff. But so you got to start with objectives, right? If you got to understand why you're there, what you're doing, and build on that. We're here to save lives, protect property, conserve the environment. What makes the biggest impact in achieving those objectives, and especially arriving with a single resource? How do you make an impact with that single resource? Of course, we look at the main objective of saving lives. Saving lives doesn't look like what it does on the first day of rookie school of grab the front leg in front of you and do a right-handed, left-handed search. Sometimes, achieving that objective means mitigating some of the situation first and getting it under control while we're doing our fast searches simultaneously. So therefore, we go back to the main concept of behind all this is, and Arthur's going to always cringes when I said this because it sounds like an engine function, but it's not. There's many parts to it, and that is no other action on the fire ground saves more lives than the properly placed, properly sized, properly timed attack line. Oh, it's an engine function. Why do we need this thing called the truck book? Well, if you go back, there's three parts of that. Proper size, yeah, that's pretty much an engine decision. Properly placed, properly timed. If you look at the major factors behind those two components, you will see truck company operations all over it. So therefore, we go back to that comment, and let me start off too by prefacing, we have audibles in this world. No fire is the same. There are so many circumstances, but what we're building in standard operating guidelines are templates. And if you go, well, Chief, I didn't follow the template. Am I in trouble? No, because you had the smarts and the expertise to understand that an audible needed to be called. I will never, discipline you because you made a decision in the front right seat that had to be made. So anyway, it goes back, and if you look at the template of, what has to be done, sure, that first due is going to look like an engine company because we're going to get a line off. Not all the time, and I'll let Arthur talk about that, but not all the time, but the majority of the time we pull up, it's going to look like an engine. And then once they get that plan, they do that size up, they put an action plan in. The next due comes in and they ask themselves, the standard operating guideline will ask, how do I support this plan? And the very simple thing is either water supply or truck company operations. And there's a command feature as well, but once again, we'll get into all that later. But how do I support it? I'm either going to get water supply or I'm going to start truck company operations. Later arriving companies arrive. How do I support it? Well, we do need a backup line at some point to support, because that's for our people. That's a protection of our egresses and possibly if the fire gets out of control. So we do need backups. Somebody arriving, another truck arrives, and you know what? It's impossible in our world to do all the truck company operations with one 3-person company. You just can't if you look at the Leverage U acronym. Therefore, you're going to have another truck company. And then eventually you're going to have to get written in there, and you're eventually going to have everything come together to support it. But it all goes back to the objectives and how you, with your organization and the circumstances that you have, such as lower staffing, 3 or 4 people, the resources you have coming in. If you don't have trucks, you got to decide and really put that together. Now you might say, well, what about these fancy ladder things that we have? That's just what I just described is describing crews. It's not describing the apparatus. Now, there has to be something in that standard operating guideline that says that we got to get a ladder to the front of that building. That's separate from what I just described. But as Arthur likes to say, you can always stretch a hose. You can't stretch a ladder. So we got to find a way to get that ladder to the front of the building and make it. Now, you might say, well, that company doesn't use that ladder. If you don't have the training or the abilities for another company to use your ladder, there's a bigger problem here, in my opinion. Okay, Arthur, I'm turning it over to you.
So, it's all based on, one thing, let me throw this in there as well. This can't be done without writing assignments either. You have to have writing assignments from the engine to the truck. And the reason for that is you could be en route in engine 72. And 72 is en route, and the chief calls and says, engine 72, I need you to come in as a truck company. And and he could say that, we've got the report of people trapped on the second floor. That's all you've been told. And the captain looks back at the guys in the back and says, did you guys hear that? And your guys in the back, they've been trained, the routine, they've switched to truck company mode, and we got that, Cap. They know they're coming off. They're going to work to do a search where? On the second floor. They're going to start a search on the second floor. They're not pulling a hand line. They're not doing anything like that. They're probably going to pull a Halligan. Both of them are probably going to pull a Halligan in the back. The officer may pull his Halligan. They're going to have hand lights. The officer have a tick, and they're going to the second floor to start a primary search, which is going to be fast and methodical. That's what it is. That is a targeted search because they've been told where to go. Now, the reason I say that is because they've been told what to do by basically saying a location. That officer looked to the back and said, do you hear that? They already knew what to do because they'd already practiced on it versus an engine company that, hey, we got to do a search. And you got guys in the back going, hey, man, you don't want that. Versus now we're being told, engine 72, I need you to come in and do roof ops because you've got another engine doing something. You already know you're a 4-man crew. You know that the person sitting behind the officer grabs the saw, the person behind the driver grabs maybe the hooks, and the driver grabs the ladder, and the officer comes with something because it's riding positions. It takes the chaos out of it. You don't even have to talk to one another except for maybe where to take the ladder to get the best, place to put the ladder to get to the roof. You already have everything. On my ladder company in the city of Lexington, if you rode for me, you had a riding position for everything we went to, from low, mid, and high rise, elevator emergencies, all the way down structure fires, large area search, everything, all the way down to working a code. Who was at the bag valve mask? Who was at the monitor? Who was doing this? Who was doing that? Because it takes the chaos out of it. It can be done on truck company operations from an engine as well. The chaos is taken out. It will not work if you don't train on it. It will not work if it's not written down. It will not work if you do not have the right mindset, and it will not work if administration is not backing it.
And I failed to mention too, so when I said support the fire TAC, it's much more than a fire TAC. It's also support the mission of saving lives. So, we can't forget that also supporting the handline also involves supporting the search. But going back to the fact that I said this was a template, and the majority of time you should look like an engine when you arrive. Should is a terrible word, because there's a component here that we have to remember. Standard operating guidelines or templates, they're one piece of the puzzle. They're really, I can identify at least 3 pieces of this puzzle that have to happen for consecutive, or for the efficient, safe, and effective fire attack, and that is this: is you got to have good standard operating guidelines, you got to have training, but most importantly, you have to have experienced company officers, fire chiefs, and firefighters on your fire ground that can make these decisions to deviate. Because what happens when you pull up first and there's somebody hanging out of a window and you're like, well, my template says I got to look like an engine. Arthur, what do?
You go after that person.
That's right. And you just deviated. But you have to have the ability, the training, the experience to understand when to deviate and how to do that. And you can't forget the objectives. Why are we here? We're here for them. We're here to save them. And, the property is important. But a lot of times we are trying to hold the fire, mitigate it, to do the most good for everyone involved. But there are times where you have to change up, and you got to have that experience level.
The search, the one thing is I like to point out is that also, we could pull up on a single story ranch, and I think almost everybody should know how a ranch is laid out. You have your service area, I call it service area, kitchen, living room, all that kind of stuff, a hallway, bedrooms, bathroom. You've got off the kitchen, probably a utility, a mud room, and a garage. I've got fire showing off of one of the rooms. We make our way off the engine and start a search. I'm going to work with my crew, working as fast as possible, getting to the fire location. Okay. And then I'm going to work my way out. It's not just doing a search. I'm going to locate the fire first. That's the biggest thing, is locate my fire first. I'm going to tell the other engine that's coming in, where it's at. If we've split a crew, I'm telling the engine who's stretching in where the fire's at. I can confine it. I could do a culmination of things, but then I'm going to work my way out doing my search. And we'll cover a lot of, I don't, this left, right, all this stuff like that. The biggest and the most successful search there is a split search. As long as I can keep up with you, voice, vision, and touch, and radio doesn't count, and we're moving and covering real estate, and we're moving to find, and covering an area, we're going to find people. That's the one that finds the most. But when I'm moving and trying to find the fire and locate the fire, it also helps everyone else. And then I move back, and the person who's closest to the fire needs me quicker. They may be getting eat up by radiated heat versus the person who is 40 feet away in a bedroom with the door closed. They're incapacitated, but the person who needs me most is the one nearest the fire. Then I work my way out. Those are the people don't understand that. You could be doing a lazy left-hand search, and I hate when people call it a lazy search over here in this end of the house, and it's going to take you forever to get to where the fire is. Well, the person who needs you the most is the one that is nearest the fire. That's part of the training, the experience of getting to understand how this all comes together and works. You won't know that unless you understand truck company operations and how a search pattern works and all the other stuff. It's the same thing as VES, going beyond the door, getting to people, putting yourself in a compartment, finding people in places where they can survive. You won't know in some places till after the fire. You're going to put yourself in shitty places sometimes, for the simple fact is you won't know if they're alive unless you're in there putting yourself in there.
Very good. I'll sum it up here, and then we'll move on to another topic. Or if you guys have anything to add, you're more than welcome to. But the way listening to you guys talk, and I hadn't really thought about it this way before, but it comes down to commitment and trust. The administration has to have a commitment to having a truck company culture, and they have to trust. The chief has to trust the operations chief. The operations chief has to trust the battalions. Battalions have, so on and so forth down the chain of command. But that only works if the company officers having those conversations with their firefighters and saying, hey, here's our roles and responsibilities based upon what we have when we roll up in the building construction and all those other things. And then the battalion chief having trust in the company officers to make the appropriate, right? So to me, to kind of sum it up, that's kind of the way I look at it, right? It's twofold. It's a commitment to the concept, and it's trust in your people.
It's accountability. I mean, it goes along with this word aggressive. A couple of years ago, you weren't allowed to use that word because you were considered, oh my gosh, you can't say aggressive because it's unsafe. I got news for you. I want my firefighters to be aggressive. And that's not being unsafe, because we're holding them accountable. If to earn the word aggressive, you have to know your job. You have to be prepared for your job. And be ready. But if you're one of those people that go to a conference, buy a shirt that says, I'm a badass firefighter, that doesn't just give you the title of aggressive. You know, we demand it, but you're going to be ready to go before you hit that fire truck.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. The book, in going through it, you guys haven't shied away from the research that's been done. Matter of fact, you embrace it, which I think is valuable, and also data. You know, there's a lot of different resources. We have way more resources out there now, and particularly over the last 10 to 15 years, or going on 20 years now, but than we guys like the three of us ever did when we came on the job, right? And for some time, when this data and this research started coming out, it wasn't necessarily embraced. Some people poo-pooed it, right? They didn't want to buy into it. And I certainly don't feel that way, but I think there are still a lot of people out there who either don't feel that it's important enough to take the time to get into, or maybe they've looked into it, they've read some information, they've gone through some of the programs, but they're not buying in. But you two obviously have embraced it based upon the information that's in the book. Can you talk about how that evolved? Is it's just ingrained in you now? It's in your DNA. It's like we can't go without all this information, or was it a evolution for you, or did you have any challenges as far as putting that stuff into the book and making it make sense to the layperson who may not be as familiar with it?
Well, for me, when it comes to the data and everything, is that the firefighter rescue survey, things like that, you cannot deny the information. And there's so many people that didn't put information into the firefighter rescue survey. There's a lot of stuff we didn't know that people never put in, but we do have information. We do have people that were saved and rescued, and we know where majority of people were found. This data is important. Are we going to find people in those places all the time? No, that's why we do a thorough search. They're just saying this is where people were found. They're giving you an idea of where people were found the most. They're giving you an idea of what search finds people the most. They're giving you an idea that the tick doesn't find the people. It's most likely going to be visual or by hand first before the tick does. It's going to tell you that there are people who have been pulled from structures with 75% of the structure on fire who have lived. It gives you data that tells you that don't give up on these people just because of what you see. Put yourself in dangerous places and go after them. Like I said earlier, you have the highest form of respiratory protection, the highest form of thermal protection for structural firefighting. You have the training, you have the knowledge, you have the equipment, you have the tools, you have everything. And if you can put yourself in a position of comfort along with respect of the fire and building construction, everything that goes along with it, you're going after people to rescue them. With all this data in the back of your mind, just because someone is found in a bedroom doesn't mean they're not going to be in the foyer or anything like that. Remember back when we all started, majority of the people were found in the bedroom at night and not in the daytime, because that's what they taught us. At the daytime, people were not in the bedrooms. They were somewhere else because everyone worked during the day and no one worked at night because everyone was home in bed. Now, the shifts are different. People's lives are different. You're going to find people in bedrooms at all hours. You're going to find people all over the place. The data just suggests stuff. The data suggests how fires start. The data from everywhere. NIST, UL, all that stuff, the way fire burns. How can you not use that information? How can you not use information that is telling you stuff that gives you an advantage over the fire, gives you advantage of getting to people, and gives you knowledge to make you a better firefighter? how can you be a naysayer? I mean, obviously it works because we're still putting work into getting the data on it, and there's a lot of people that have proven that the data is important.
Yeah. I think that what the data does is it validates. Without validation, all you have is theory. And Arthur and I really wanted a book that wasn't based on theory. I mean, it was based on experiences and things that we encountered in our careers, and definitely in his career, and the successes we had. But a lot of it's theory. I mean, when I wrote Suburban Fire Tactics it came out in 2013, but I wrote it in 2011. That's before all this occurred. A lot of it was experience and theory. Now, a lot of it was backed up, but still, I really wanted the ability as an author for validation. I didn't want to just come out there with my opinions. I mean, think about what has happened in the fire service. When we were all about that same age group, when I was a kid in the fire academy, break every window you can, kid, get a lift and save everybody inside. But on first day, what's on that fire tetrahedron that the fire really likes? Oxygen. It should have made a lot of sense, but we didn't. We didn't because our job was to break stuff, get a lift. Yeah, you got a lift. I mean, you can't deny it. You got a lift, but guess what? How long was that lift?
You spread the fire.
All of a sudden, then that bad lift turned into a lot of red stuff called fire that happened because it was oxygen deficient. And then, these are things that really need to get into the culture. When we talk about culture, this has to get into the education aspect of all of our firefighters. And once you start at the ground level, it'll carry on throughout their career. But, it just helped us with the coordination of all of our tactics, really. I mean, it really goes behind when do you ventilate? When do you put water on fire? When did it all occur? It just makes sense. But, a lot of things were also at first, in my opinion, misinterpreted or mislabeled. For example, horizontal ventilation or vertical ventilation. Let's get into this. Vertical ventilation is horrible, folks. It should never occur. That's not what these studies said. You're looking at it wrong. And I'm sorry, I know, Eric, you got a question about ventilation if we have time, but vertical ventilation is one of the most practical, efficient, or effective ventilation practices there are. Why don't we do it then? I'll tell you why. Because we have an issue coordinating that. And you might say, well, do we get on roofs? Sure, we'll get on roofs. We don't tell you can't get on roofs. But the majority of the time, we will initiate horizontal ventilation prior to the vertical. And you might say, well, you just said it's the most effective. With the staffing I have, with the resources I have, to coordinate that fire attack with ventilation should not be air remove. Oh, the fire's out. Let's remove the smoke. That's not ventilation. Ventilation should be in coordination with the fire attack, assist the fire attack, and also, as quick as possible, clear the room for those people that are trapped or for your firefighters inside that structure. When you put the fire out and say, okay, where's the checklist? Let's go ahead and get this bad stuff out of here. That's smoke removal. That's not ventilation, right? I mean, so in all honesty, the horizontal ventilation is what we do a lot of times just because we can coordinate it in a timely manner. It takes a lot for us with less staffing, for less resources to get on a roof and cut it. It's not that we're less manly or we're afraid of the safety factor. It's the time factor.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And like you said, it's one size does not fit all, right? Yeah. Vertical ventilation might be the ideal, but you've only got two people, I mean, so horizontal is more expedient, right? And as long as you coordinate
I would think that's the case. And this goes back to your question of why are we embracing the science? This is why we're embracing the science to justify some of the tactics that we are putting on the fire ground. Yeah. But, we're not going to tell you never get on a roof. No, never, but that's just one of the reasons why we hit that quickly.
Yeah. No, it's important. And I mean, I'm not trying to bait you or anything. I mean, it's, the ventilation is important, whether you, and obviously the research, as you said, it's how the research is interpreted and what did they do and how did they do their tests and were those, how did those tests, in a controlled environment, the way they were doing them, what do those translate into on the fire ground, right? Because
Right.
there are differences, right? I mean, and
Oh,
so,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. They did do a
So
phenomenal job in those research studies, though. I mean, with the structures they built, and UL just really, I think, has really enhanced our understanding of fire behavior.
mhm. No, by leaps and bounds, absolutely, absolutely. Arthur, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
I not really because he covered it perfect. Because I mean, it is what it is. The data's there, and you can't deny it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and I'm a big supporter of the research and the data and everything that's come out. I think it's everybody should know more about it. I get frustrated because I've worked around people that can quote you some football player's stats from 20 years ago, but they don't know, any. You ask you say UL or FSRI, and they want to know how to spell it, right? Because they don't have any recollection of it. So yeah, it's incredibly important, and I was very happy to see a lot of references to that stuff in the book. I think you guys did a great job. Um, well, we're at the hour mark now, so just as we kind of wind things down and wrap up the episode, Chief, I'll start with you. Um, what are some, if you had one or two or three things that you want to make sure that get said in this episode with regards to this book, what would they be? Um, as far as the content, why you did it, what people could take away from it, those sorts of things.
Sure. I would just start off with the American Fire Service is not an even playing field. Some of us have a way more advantage going to fires with the resources and the staff that we have, but that doesn't mean that you still don't you have a less responsibility. You as a fire service still have the same responsibility in rural America as the urban, in the fact that your job is to save lives, protect property. You just have to find the right tactics to make that work. And you can't deny that the coordinated fire attack, coordinated actions are what we're looking for here. And you can't have coordinated actions without truck company operations. You just can't. Even if you don't have a truck company, you have to find a way to support that fire attack, facilitate that fire attack, and more importantly, to facilitate searches and understand the difference between searches and rescues. Everything is a search. Rescues are known, searches are unknown. And we have to have the ability to make sure that happens at every fire ground. We'd love to make excuses for ourselves. I could easily make excuses saying, "Hey, I only got 3 people in a company." We have to overcome those hurdles, those circumstances, and have the ability to put these plans in place to do the most for our communities, for our civilians, and that's really why we're here. And Arthur and I wrote this book to try to capture that. More importantly, we wanted an all-encompassing book that not only captured, standard operating guidelines, academics, but also to capture, the culture, attitudes, expertise, how it's all a big part of this big picture.
Captain Ashley?
The one thing I wish we could have done with the book, and I'll say this again, I wish I could have broke it down into the tactics portion of it, and it would have been a bigger book. And I wish we could have done that. But with that being said, truck company operations take place at every fire. Every working fire, truck company operations take place or should take place. And every fire department should embrace truck company operations, because it's all about the people that we go after. It's about them. It truly is. That's why we exist. Property can be rebuilt, but we need to remember why we are truly here, going after people. Truck company operations, you have to be able to understand more than one task. You have to be able to understand that you're going to go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And that was one of the best things I loved about the truck company, was you were always thinking 2 to 3 to 4 steps ahead, and you had to do different tasks. You may be forcing the door for the engine to make entry and fight the fire. You may be forcing the door to start a search. You may be laddering the building for rescue. You may be laddering the building for egress or going to the roof. You may be hitting a fire escape and going to the roof. You may be pulling raising a ladder and pulling the ladder up and going back over the other side to a courtyard. You have to know how to do all this stuff. And then the other thing is you can't do all this stuff until you understand truck company operations. You can't do all this stuff until you understand how to do this stuff. And then you have to train, and then you have to incorporate it, and you can't stop training on it. You may be in a fire department that doesn't make many runs at all, but you're going to have that one run in your career, volunteer, combination, or paid, that is going to test you. Or you may be on a super busy department and you're challenged every week with a fire or two, but you're going to be challenged sometime in your career, either working by yourself or with somebody else on the interior, or you're on the exterior by yourself. You have to know the basics. And if you're doing truck work, you got to know truck work and be able to go from the engine mode to the truck mode immediately on the spot, if need be.
Excellent. Well said by both of you. Thank you. Chief, where can the audience find you? How can they get a copy of your first book, Suburban Tactics, or a copy of this book? If they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way and all that sort
Absolutely.
of stuff?
So our book can be found through our publisher, Fire Engineering Books. Go Google Fire Engineering Books, find them online, and you will be able to find a place where to order these books. We don't sell them directly, but you can definitely find them on there. If you want to get a hold of me, Arthur and I would love to come out and talk to you about this and anything regarding our book. You can find me at jim@suburbanfiretactics.com. Shoot me an email, and we'd be glad to talk to you about it. And yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Captain Ashley?
Well, same can be said. To get in touch with me, you can get two ways to get in touch with me. You can do my personal email, which is ashes752@hotmail, and hotmail.com, which shows how old my email address is, being Hotmail. And then the other one is ashes752@streetsmarttactics.com. And that is the name of my company that I have. And between Street Smart is a hyphen. So you can reach me there as well.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you very much, both of you. Really appreciated you coming on the episode. And I certainly, I picked up a few more things listening to, not just a few more, but several things listening to the conversation today. So I really appreciate the information. Highly recommend the book to everybody that's out there that has any desire to get better at doing this job. So on behalf of the Fire Engineering Network, Chief Dave Rhodes, Diane Rothschild, I want to thank everybody for listening in this month, and we'll see you in July. Everybody have a good summer. Take care.